好久不见了 ，guys。今天我们要来弄一点 Mr. Coconut Pineapple MCP。然后呢，我就边吃饭边跟大家一起来学 MCP， 没有错。好久不见大家。之后呢，应该就会是，如果晚上没事，我就上来跟大家直播，学点新东西，大概是我目前的规划。那我们就事不宜迟，哎，早晚你们什么时间点开，你们都在是不是？什么鬼？好啦，总而言之，现在我要来学 MCP，然后我们就一起学吧。我打算每20分钟我们开个 flow， 我们可以每25分钟来小小的复盘一下刚刚那25分钟学了些什么。所以我这边开一个新的，看一下哦 ，Screen Capture 吧，然后挑，是 Screen 吗？不对，Application Capture， 背后灵也太可怕了吧 ？Media Source 吗？我看一下啊，好久没用这个。Browser 吧，是吗？好像不是。要选哪一个呀 ？Media Source 吗？好像也不是。Screen Capture 吧。然后点进来之后，应该会有一个 Application Capture， 然后这里我就可以找到我的 Flow， 水了，guys。水咯 ，nice 哟，好呀 ，very nice。等一下，那它不能不见了，我的这个不能不见了，要让它。我们来设个20分钟好了，15分钟好了，15分钟复盘一次。Auto Start 应该有个 setting 吧，我想要，我想让它不要消失，但怎么做呢？App 吗？应该不是。有设定了，刚刚没有吧？看一下。不要 hide， 不要 full screen， 就这样吧。Nice， 那就重新整理15分钟。好，来看看15分钟可以学什么吧。Super Beginner， 找个点阅率高的这个，N8N 的官方好啊，行啊。
Hey Flowgrammers, N8N just dropped a native.
刚刚删除了，应该是刚刚新增的吧？这个字幕怎么回事？我要自动产生，再开我们的字幕。
Hey Flowgrammers, N8N just dropped a
drop 吧，好吧。
native MCP server and MCP client node. In this video, I'm going to quickly explain what MCP is and why it might be relevant for you, and then we're going to take a look at how to use the new MCP server and MCP client nodes within N8N. So if you already know what MCP is, use the chapters to skip ahead. MCP is an abbreviation. It stands for Model Context Protocol. It was designed and released by Anthropic, creator of the popular Claude models, including Sonnet 3.7, and it's an attempt to standardize the communication that LLMs do with other systems. Since its release near the end of 2024, it's gotten quite a lot of adoption. In particular, OpenAI has signed on to support the standard, and various SaaS apps and other desktop tools even are bringing support for MCP. The reason that's important, of course, is the utility a protocol can provide really hinges on its network effect, right? If people aren't adopting it, no one's going to use it. So, for example, SD cards were useful because everyone used SD cards. Sony's memory stick, that's a different story. There's plenty of videos that will give you a really deep technical dive into what MCP is, so I'm just going to keep it really high level and go over the key conceptual entities in the MCP framework. The first relevant entity is the MCP host. This is your LLM-powered app that basically needs context from the outside world, from outside systems, or to interact with those systems, i.e. you use them as tools. So Claude Desktop would be an example of an MCP host. The next one is the MCP client. This manages the connection.
做笔记啦，各位，做笔记。等我一下哦，我要做笔记。我的那个直播的讲义在哪儿？我要做笔记了。我觉得有可能我会需要像这样子，像这样子。
Between hosts and servers, which brings us to the MCP server, which is typically a lightweight program that exposes various functionality and actions basically that you can take in that server. To my understanding right now,
太快了。
this manages the connection between hosts and servers, which brings us to the MCP server, which is typically is the MCP host. This is your LLM-powered app that basically needs context from the outside world, from outside systems, or to interact with those systems, i.e. you use them as tools. So Claude Desktop would be an example of an MCP host. The next one is the MCP client. This manages the connection between hosts and servers, which brings us to the MCP server, which is typically a lightweight program that exposes various functionality and actions basically that you can take in that server. To my understanding right now, and I think a lot of us are still wrapping our heads around this, I like to think of the MCP server as basically an API and docs that's sent along to the MCP host, which is your LLM. And this way it gets a single package, it knows what it can use, how to use it, and then the ability to use it as well. So it's an actionable API essentially in the context of an LLM. Now, before we get into the cool new MCP functionality within N8N, I do think it's
ちょっと待てよ，这个味噌汤有点洒了。
important to note that MCP is a new protocol and not everyone in the engineering community is happy with it. Which, if we look at the case of microservices, for example, you're never going to get all engineers to agree on something. But the good argument that I've heard essentially was, look, we've got a lot of already well-established protocols for computers to interact with each other. For example, RESTful APIs. So why did we need to go create a
那个跟大家补充一下，我觉得重要的事情。我呢，今天晚上是吃白饭跟味噌汤，给大家看一下，这边是味噌汤。我刚煮了一些饭，所以今天会有这个汤泡饭。我的饭好啦，所以就弄一下吧，顺手来弄一下饭。 这边给大家看一下，翻，然后我这边准备了这个韩式的不知道什么东西，然后大家就把这个味噌汤嘎进去，这是我的晚餐啦。
New protocol, which is a fair argument. Nonetheless, it's being adopted across the AI industry. Again, big players are adopting this. The N8N team has added it to make sure that the N8N community can be on the bleeding edge and exploring how these new protocols could help us do more. And I think the big question that we're all asking and we'd love the community help on is, why is MCP not just another REST API? What can MCP allow you to do that we couldn't do before in the context of N8N workflows? And I think that's a perfect segue to jump into the N8N canvas and check out the new MCP server and MCP client nodes within N8N. I'm going to first show you how to use MCP server because it allows your Claude desktop or any other MCP host to access hundreds of different tools and custom workflows that you can build inside of N8N. I think it's going to be super, super powerful. So from a blank workflow, let's add our first step. Since the MCP server is something that our MCP host is going to consume, in N8N it's going to be a trigger. So let's search for MCP, and we see the MCP server trigger in here. Let's click to add that to the canvas. It doesn't have any parameters right now. This isn't beta. We're going to add some other things that MCP supports, but the N8N team wanted to get this out, get your feedback on this, so we can iterate on it faster for you. So if you do have any feedback, make sure to go to community.n8n.io and drop a comment there. So we've added the MCP server. What we
等一下，那我这样倒进白饭上面是不是不太好？可恶，这样就不能爽爽吃白饭了。
you need to now do is give it some tools that then our host can access. For this first example, let's just add a really basic one and add the calculator tool because LLMs are not that good at doing math, so we'd rather have them use a tool for that. So let's do that. And let's save this. Now you're going to want to make sure that your work was activated, so activate that. Next, we need to go over to Claude or whatever your MCP host is. Again, I'm going to use the Claude desktop app here. If you don't have the Claude desktop app, the dependencies you're going to need to run what we're doing here today is to download the Claude desktop app, have an Anthropic account. You're also going to have Node installed because Claude desktop today doesn't support communicating with MCP clients through SSE, which is what the N8N team supports in the MCP trigger. There's a lot of technical reasons why the N8N team chose that, but you are going to have to use a gateway meanwhile that's going to basically do that SSE part and make sure that Claude can communicate with your MCP trigger. Once you open up Claude desktop, make sure that you're in developer mode. To do that, from the top menu, there's going to be a help section and it's going to say enable developer mode. I already did that and I can't find a way to undo that, but make sure that you're in Claude developer mode and ask your favorite LLM if you don't know how to do that. All right, so from Claude, open the settings, and then here we're going to go down to the developer section and we want to click this edit config button. That's going to open up a folder, and in here we see this JSON file, so you're going to want to open that with your favorite text editor. In this case, I'm using Sublime. Unless you've been tinkering with MCP before, this page is going to be blank, and you're going to want to paste in this. A few things to call out. I am using Super Gateway here. This is going to allow Claude to communicate with RMs. I am using Super Blank, and you're going to want to paste in this. A few things to call out. I am using Super Gateway here. This is going to allow Claude to communicate with our MCP trigger over SSE protocol because Claude doesn't natively support that right now. So that is a dependency. And one pro tip here, if this is failing, if you're getting errors when you're trying this, try to run this command manually in your terminal, so npx, and then pass this arguments, super gateway, SSE, and then swap in the webhook URL. Because I was having some errors around this, it was failing in terminal, and I actually had some permission errors around Node itself. I fixed that, and then it was working. So if you're getting some errors around that, first try to run this command manually in your terminal. Okay, the structure here is we've got MCP servers. We can have many of these MCP servers, right? And in this case, we need to now paste in that webhook URL. Let's go back to my workflow. Let's open that up. Let's get the webhook URL, copy that production URL. Let's copy that. and let's paste that in here. So
比想象中的难一点。
Save this. Now we do need to restart Claude, so I'm hitting Command Q to close it. We're gonna open it back up. It's loaded, and we see now we've got one MCP tool available here, and we see that we've got the calculator tool, and it's from the N8N server. Now, we could have called the server calculator as well, but let's assume you have like your N8N instance, and you're gonna want to have a few tools that you give Claude access to, so this could be a good way to go do that. Tool is called calculator. Let's see if we can run it. What is 50 times 10? Use the calculator tool. Let's see. Okay, so we get a permission check in here. This is interesting. Nice. It's even showing what arguments it would use. Okay, let's allow for this chat. Well, this is really cool how it's kind of the UX of how it's showing you how it's interacting with that. Okay, so this is what it responded with. It's 500. Let's go double check that. So in my workflow, I can go over to the executions. Great, this one just ran. Just open up the calculator and see. Yep, that's the 500 response. Query 50 times 10. Perfect. And so this is just the calculator tool, right? I'm sure Claude even has its own calculator, so maybe that's not as interesting. But what I'm trying to show you here is how to get unblocked on setting this up, because actually creating this thing here took me a bit of effort. There was a few headbanging moments, so hopefully you avoid that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna have this in the description. If you're watching this somewhere else, get to the YouTube video, I will have this snippet here for you. And just to call out again, we can add many different tools here. There's all various vector stores you could use, so your Claude desktop or whatever host you're using can be a knowledge RAG assistant already, connecting with lots of different apps and services. But some of the really cool ones to call out, I think, where N8N is gonna be really interesting is again the call N8N workflow tool, which is going to allow your MCP host to interact with any arbitrary N8N workflow. That itself could be an AI agent, it could be some air-gapped, self-hosted enterprise information that's really, really sensitive for you. So that's how you set up the MCP server trigger in N8N. If I click the tool here from my AI agent, let's add that to the canvas, MCP, and we'll see the MCP client tool. So let's click to add that. Now we'll set it up in a second, but just to contextualize this, the AI agent in this case is our host, right? As the host, it's gonna interact with the client. In the client, we're gonna configure the connection basically to the MCP server. So then the AI agent's our host, it's using the client to interact with our MCP server. Now, since we just built an MCP server through this MCP trigger in another workflow, let's have our AI agent here interact with that calculator tool. I'll double click on it, and we're gonna add a credential to connect with. We'll create a new one. And inside the credential, the SSE endpoint, that's what we need to actually get from our MCP trigger here. So I'll go in here and grab that production URL, paste.
我们先照着来做一下吧。先把这个讲义稍微写一下哦。我现在要做一个课程讲义，我会稍微跟你说一下我想要记录的方向大概长什么样子，我也会把我看的影片的逐字稿传给你。根据这个逐字稿啊，我就是主要想要记录一个概念，一个概念就是说，我们今天在建制 MCP， 在使用 N8N 建制 MCP 的时候，主要会分成3个模块。第一个模块是 host， 第二个模块是 client， 然后第3个模块是 server。那根据我所知道的 host 就有点像，比如说 cloud，N8N 的 cloud， 它就是要 Powered LLM 去做事情，那中间，然后再就是 server 就是可能它会有，它会做一些动作嘛，然后就是可能资讯的执行方，然后中间会有一个 client 去连接 host 跟 server， 大概这种概念。然后它后面好像有提到 N8N 是什么 SSE， 然后 cloud 不是，所以它需要用一个方法，然后去让这2个可以连在一起，大概是这样吧。我就是然后这边的逐字稿，我看我拿不拿得到，应该是拿得到。我这边到944，所以944之前，我想要来给它搞一下。 啊，完了哦！我不知道你们知不知道，就是如果你就是语音输入的话，它大部分的东西都是会被清，它都是会被清掉的这样子。整个味道怎么这么淡？好啦，那经过了15分钟，我就要来进行这个15分钟的小总结。对不起，在过去的15分钟里面，我们一起看了一个 N8N 的官方影片，了解了在 MCP 里面它有分3大模组。看一下 ，MCP 叫做 Model Context Protocol， 由 N8N 发布的，有点像它的创办人。然后后面大家就觉得这个概念挺好的，所以就跟进，让它变成一个标准化的概念。那现在已经有很多家公司都支持 MCP 包括 OpenAI。我以为 OpenAI 会不支持啊，毕竟 OpenAI 里面很多人其实都是跳槽去那个 N8N 的 Cloud。我以为他会赌气，没想到他就事论事。这写错了吧？这是 Cloud 的。我看一下，这是我的问题吗？哦，还是他逐字稿的问题啊？有可能哦。看一下，所以我觉得重点就是要了解这3段吧，就是有 host、有 client 跟 server， 然后 client 会连接 host 跟 server， 轻量级的程序 host 透过 client 调用的接口，所以 host 要跟 client 说 ，client 把 host 的需求 ，client 在中间，它是媒婆，他把 host 的需求告诉 server， 哦，应该是这种概念。所以我这边我觉得重点就这一段吧，NCP 的3大模块，我觉得这个挺重要的。那再来这个东西，我们就一起来实做一下呗，看一下。我就叫它20250416 MCP Calculator， 弄个计算机，所以应该有个 MCP 哦。我玩不到 MCP 吗？啊？所以接下来15分钟的目标就会是做一个 calculator。哦，不对，我看一下，修正接下来15分钟的目标。目标呢？找到 MCP， 什么东西啊？Why can't I find MCP? N8N。不是歌，我 MCP 那歌。我 AI agent 可以连到 MCP 吗？ 台湾有人玩吗？
Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到偷懒办公室，我是偷懒办公室的 Kevin。大家好消息来了，N8N 终于更新了 MCP 的服务。这个 MCP 服务呢，之前那个是别人开发的，那这次要介绍的呢是 N8N 自己在他们开发团队里面自己开发的 MCP， 在这个 1.88.0 的这个版本。
1.88，请问我是哪一版？ 请问我是哪一版？有没有我的版本？有没有我的版本？哎，我是1.72哎。 啊，所以我这边要先，我该不会要部署吧？什么？我去年自费学买了 DK 编程小学生版跟 Stream 高中生版，觉得我志不在此，但是不要伤害我的感情好吗？这什么东西啊？这是什么东西啊 ？What is this？ 我现在很困惑，我先部署一下好了 ，N8N Docker Mac。
Desktop app. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you a very easy way to self-host N8N on your local machine using the Docker desktop app. If you're not familiar with Docker, don't worry, I'll explain everything step by step. This is going to be completely no-code solution, meaning that we're going to utilize the Docker desktop from start to finish. So how to host different accounts. I just want to quickly introduce what Docker is and why that much.
我呢，在这边跟大家解释 Docker 最好理解的方式。这里有一罐芝麻海苔。如果呢，我今天想要在我的家里面用这个芝麻海苔，我可以去买一罐芝麻海苔，然后就可能撒在我家的各个地方。我要吃的时候就舔一下地板，我要吃的时候就舔一下地板。但是呢，我如果今天要搬家怎么办？我是不是就要扫地？ 然后把这些芝麻海苔全部扫起来，然后把它聚集起来，然后再把它一起跟着我一起去搬家，对吧？什么叫做 Docker 呢 ？Docker 的概念就是，你把你的芝麻海苔就放在这一个罐子里面。今天我要搬家，我就直接拎着罐子，我就直接出门，我到哪我都可以撒出来吃。所以 Docker 就有点像是一个 容器，然后这个容器呢，可以让你在各个地方去用你的东西。我们把 N8N 放在这个 Docker 的容器里面，我们随时要在哪里用，我们都可以拿出来用。我们今天要在其他的电脑上用，今天我要在我朋友上的电脑上用，都可以直接去操作，没有问题的。哎，大概是这样。
Might be running, so that's what gives it a huge advantage, ensuring it's really stable and reliable. And another big advantage is the scalability. We're going to focus on images and containers. Actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and create a folder so that way we can put all of our N8N data into that folder, so that way we can keep track of the data that we use. All right, so I'm going to go to my Finder. So go to your home page and right-click New folder, and then we're gonna call this N8N-data. Alright, so right now the folder is empty. Alright, we're good to go here. Okay, so let's
哦，对不起，我没看到。
to that folder, so that way we can keep track of the data that we use. Alright, so I'm gonna go to my Finder. So go to your home page and right-click New folder, and then we're gonna call this N8N-data.
完了，这是 Docker 吗？哦，开了，好。这是什么啊？朱贝尔是你的名字吗？这 这是什么 application download， 所以应该就是单纯的 Finder 吧，就是这种。但我也不知道为什么左边这里变得蛮少的，还有我觉得有点讨厌，不知道左边的这些栏位都去哪了。看一下，应该有个资料夹是我的名字呀。找个资料夹，找到了，不对，哦，是耶。是有，可以拉吗？所以我左边到底，找到你们了 ，nice。那我要加一个什么？它叫什么 ？N8N data。好啊，我就跟着你一起做 N8N data。
Alright. So right now the folder is empty. Alright, we're good to go here. Okay, so let's minimize this. So now I'm gonna come to my images. And we're gonna go ahead and click on search images to run. So here what we're gonna do is search for N8N IO/N8N. I've already done that, but let's go ahead and do it. We're gonna type N8N IO/N8N. Okay? And the first one, as you can see right here, it says 100 million plus 293 stars. So make sure that you're downloading this image because otherwise it's gonna give you something, not download, sorry, you're gonna pull this. So make sure that you're on the correct one, and I'm going to click on pull. And once you click on pull, now as you can see, it's loading. So now this is going to pull all of that data into your local desktop.
我报错了，这也可以报错哦。不要闹好不好哦？这是什么？救救我 GPT！ 哎呀！shit，登出，再登录，U，我应该可以 open， 什么呀？炸裂。可以打我的 mail 吗？哦，可以啊。登了吗？进了吗？行了吗？过了吗？过了。所以我觉得在过了的情况下，我的 Docker 我再重新开这个 Docker， 我想应该是能过的哟，各位。我还可以升级，我觉得是可以过的，各位。我登录了，所以我这里再重新输入 N8N， 过，我重新登录了，应该要能过，跑这么久应该是能过吧？继续吃。给大家看一下，过半了，各位。那么与之同时，我想要看一下那个 ChatGPT 4.1哦。过了吗？碎啦，好吧，就让它跑。4.1比4.5还要好，要不然就4.6啊。我觉得他们取名真的越来越有点 fuck up 嘞，就是真的在跟那个苹果有的比，在那边什么 Pro Max 那种感觉。Mini 跟 Nano 会不会太难了呀？有没有考量到我们华语圈的朋友，能不能 Mini 跟 Super Mini 啊？4.5，我们平常玩的不是4.5吗？本来就有4.5吧？4跟4哦，4.5是新的哦，你跟4差在哪？啊，完了，你跟所以在过去的15分钟里面，我摸索了一下怎么样在我的电脑找到 MCP。所以我看一下哦，这边是，然后所以我这边决定就是用 Docker 吧。这样。然后等一下的第3阶段呢，我就实际来感受一下。休息，大家休息一下，起来走一走。 水饺吃不下了，冰起来吧。来，继续看影片。
Top app, and it will be saved under the images tab, and again we'll take a look at that in a little bit. So now that you have the correct image downloaded here, so now you can see here it says the size, and now on the right hand side here it says run. So for the first time when you click on run, we need to set a few optional settings. So once you click on run, it's going to open up this pop-up where it says run a new container, optional settings. So you're going to click on the right hand side here, you're going to put a container name because otherwise it will select a random name. So I'm just going to say N8N container dash container, so that way I can recognize.
好。
Alright, so the host port, so this is where you want to host on your local computer what port, which in a little bit I'll show you what that means. But for now, just put 5678, and this will map this Docker container to your local port, so that way you can access it through your local machine. And again, like I said, in a little bit I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so the volume, this is where you want N8N to store its data, so that way if the container is stopped or even if it's deleted, then all of your data will persist. So this one, you're going to click on this 3 dots here, and you're going to go ahead and select the folder that you created, right? So earlier we went to our home page and created this folder called N8N-data. So you're just going to double click, select that, and click on open. So for the container path, you need to enter /home/node and then /.n8n. And then, so what this does is this ensures that the data on your host machine is synced to N8N's directory inside the container of this Docker container. So this basically ensures that all of the data is saved in the correct area. Okay, that's good. Environment variable, this is optional. So if you want to do any kind of authentication, this is where you enter. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and use ChatGPT to put in variables here, but I'm gonna just leave it as it is. So now that we're done with that, all I have to do is click on run. And as soon as I do that, you can see now it brings us to the container tab and it runs all this stuff. And then on the bottom, as you can see now, it says editor is now accessible via localhost 5678. And this is exactly what we typed earlier, right? The port, so the 5678, which means that now on the port in your local machine, the port 5678, you'll be able to have access to N8N. So I'm just gonna copy this and go to a new tab. I'm here on top and paste it. And there you go. So now you can set up your email account. So as soon as you paste that in your local machine, it will take you to the form where now you will have to set up a new username and password. And again, this has nothing to do with your cloud account, so therefore there is no migration here. So go ahead and enter your information. I'm gonna go ahead and enter mine. Okay, so once you do that, click on next. And now you have to just customize the N8N. It'll just ask you a few questions, go through it. Service, review, it's gonna say, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Self, find, Google, get started. Alright. So now it presents you the blank workflows. And again, it's the same environment or the same user interface, just like if you were to access from your cloud account. You have your templates over here, you have your accounts, you have N8N.
我觉得出事了，各位，我觉得出事了。好，
And your credentials and start from scratch means that now you can just jump into your workflow. And again, same thing, you hack.
现在最重要的事情是确认它是不是1.88。哎，我也可以直接这样测。这里有没有我的 MCP？ Nice 啊 ，nice 啊 ，guys。
Have the ability to access everything from your local host here, your advanced AIs, AI agents, whatever you need, all of this will be accessed. One thing is if you want to import your workflows from your cloud account, go to your cloud account, come to the top right hand corner here, and you're going to click on download, and then you can come back here and click on import from file, and then you'll just basically select that downloaded JSON file, and then that will import all of your workflows here. And then obviously you have to add your credentials because it's not going to migrate over the credentials because now you're using your local machine to run everything. And that's pretty much it. So if you already have a bunch of workflows on your cloud account, you can migrate them over very easily. Alright, so now let's go ahead and actually stop this so that way you see how that works as well. So now if you are done with your workflows and you want to stop the container that's running, all you have to do is come to the container and then right here it says stop, click on this. And it says stopping N8N, as you can see in the bottom here, and it's stopped. And as you can see, now there's that option of play button that appears. So now if we go back to our local host and refresh this or enter this again, reload, now it says that this site can't be reached because obviously it appears. So now, and it's stopped. And it's running, all you have to do is come to the container and then right here it says stop, click on this. And it says stopping N8N, as you can see in the bottom here, and it's stopped. And as you can see, now the site can run it to your. So You don't have to just make setting up the self-hosted AI starter kit. So this is going to be basically similar to what we did earlier, but now we're going to use our command line because we'll be able to install everything within our local machine, including Olama and Quadrant, which Olama which is machine another there because setup and use time and automation or tutorial that you want me to do, please go ahead and put it in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next. In this step-by-step tutorial, we're going to build a very powerful agent that will have the ability to scrape and extract real time.
好啊，各位，现在呢，我要来总结一下。我希望你帮我做一个使用说明。那这个使用说明呢，是如何在 local 端去下载 Docker， 并且部署 N8N。具体的做法呢，是我觉得我要先解释一下 Docker 啊。Docker， 你要想象这个是写给一个完全不理解 AI 的人，完全不理解程式概念的人，所以我想要说 Docker 就有点像是芝麻海苔的罐头，的瓶子，然后如果你平时想要吃这个东西的话，你可以把它撒在你的家里，要吃的时候你就蹲下来，就直接舔地板就可以直接吃。但是呢，如果你今天要把它带出门的话，就会变得有点难，因为你要再把地板的东西扫起来，才可以把它带走。那 Docker 做的事情呢，它就是提供你一个瓶子，让你可以把你的芝麻海苔放进这个瓶子里面，这样你要用的时候就可以直接带着瓶子就走。你在外面野餐的时候，你也可以直接撒。大概是这种概念。所以我们把 N8N 装在 Docker 这种容器里面。我们想要用的时候就可以直接用，想要在别的电脑上面用的话，也可以直接去做移转。那具体的下载方法呢，就是到 Docker DOCKER 的官方网站，然后你就可以下载，看你是 Windows 还是 Mac。那 Mac， 那你就进行下载。下载之后，你可以看到左边有 Container 啊、Image Volume Build， 然后 Docker Scout 或是 Extension 这些东西。我们要选的呢是选第二个 Image。那在选 Image 之前，你可以先在你的电脑上面去开一个资料夹，叫做 N8N-Data， 因为到时候我们要把资料放在这里面。好，那你就点了 Image 之后，你在上面的 Search 的地方，你打 N8NIO/N8N， 你会看到有一个超过100 million 下载次数的，那你就直接点 PULL。然后去给它下载到你的电脑，下载好之后呢，你就可以在你的 image 的地方看到下面有一个 N8N， 那你就按一下右边的 Run， 然后在 Optional Setting 的地方会推荐在 Container Name 的地方给它命名，不然它的名字会乱命，那就命名，你就叫它 N8N-Container， 然后的 Host Port 就是这个地方我会建议你打5678，那个 Volume 的 Host Path 啊，就是你之后的资料，你可以按旁边的3个点点，那你就可以去把刚刚那个资料夹的那个 path 放进去 N8N-data 的，然后 container path 你就打 dash home dash node， 然后 slash 点 N8N 这样子，然后你就可以用啦。那你就再跑一个你。好了之后，你就按右下角的 Run， 它就开始跑，然后跑完之后，下面就会出现一个 localhost， 然后冒号5678，你就点它进去之后，你就可以进去，然后就输入你的信箱 first name last name password， 就可以直接开始使用，大概就这样子。然后这个是因为目前的 Cloud 版本还没有办法使用 MCP， 然后只有在 local 端的时候可以用到 MCP， 所以这个方法就推荐给大家，大概是这样。Docker my enemy, so time consuming to build certain CUDA libraries. You know, I'm not a professional. So maybe we'll face that. Maybe we will face that problem later on. 然后呢，我觉得他这个影片非常的棒，我决定给他一个赞，然后用我 Nuga 的官方账号给他留一个言。Yes, finally self-host on my Mac. 恭喜 ！You are the best. 好，一定要挺一下优秀的创作者，再给自己一个赞，再给你一个赞，再给你一个赞。好的，那这你也可以删了，或者等一下这个部分。这个已经在跑了吧，所以我这边看一下有 MCP 了。我还要载 Cloud 对不对？还是我已经有 Cloud 的啦？感觉要载一下哟，呵呵，好多东西要载哦。让它跑一下。Isn't Olama Mac compatible? Olama? Really? I have Olama here. 这边 Olama quit. 不是今天的主题 Olama。你怎么还在跑啊？好吧，那我就继续看我的。稍后观看记录。这个。
In our SSE endpoint and
So cloud. 回。给它跑一下。皆さん This is 鲑鱼さん This is my another dinner. 好像没有给我酱油哦。马子乙です。哎，又到休息时间了，好吧，就休息5分钟吧。所以呢，在下一个阶段，我的目标会变成用 MCP 制作一个 N8N 计算机。Yes， 好啦，我们今天非常的有目标，15分钟在推进各式各样的进度，所以来到了我们的第3阶段，用 MCP 制作一个计算机。好，那我看一下。你小麻烦啊。Good. Quick skip. 是哟。好，那我等一下就先这样子啦，休息一下，等下回来吃鲑鱼，直接洗碗。筷子，少了一点酱油，真的感觉少了一点味儿。哎呀！来吧，他们说我要先变 developer 是不是 ？How can I become developer? Get started. 他要做两个，一个是 get alert 跟 get forecast。要 Python。The fuck? The fuck? 不是啊，我算 client 吧，我看一下。ちょっと待って。 ちょっと待って ，a little bit hard，a little bit hard， 这个我先说起来，这个我先放着，这个我先说起来，这个你继续跑，这个。嗯，
Should we be doing like big smile or?
Big smile, sorry.
That's alright. I'm Boris, I'm an engineer.
I'm Kat, I'm a product manager.
We love seeing what people build with Quad, especially with code.
Works.
And should we be doing like big smile or?
Big smile, sorry.
That's alright. I'm Boris, I'm an engineer.
I'm Kat, I'm a product manager.
We love seeing what people build with Quad, especially with coding. And we want to make Quad better at coding for everyone. We built some tools, one of which we're sharing today. We're launching Quad Code as a research preview. Quad Code is an agentic coding tool that lets you work with Quad directly in your terminal. We're going to show you an example of it in action.
So we have a project here. It's a Next.js app. Let's open it up in an instance of Quad Code. Now that we've done this, Quad Code has access to all of the files in this repository. We don't know much about this codebase. It looks like an app for chatting with a customer support agent. Let's get Quad to help explain this codebase to us. Quad starts by reading the higher level files, and then it dives in deeper. Now it's going through all the components of the project. Cool, here's its final analysis.
So, say I was asked to replace this left sidebar with a chat history, and I'm also going to add a new chat bot.
我们离题了，各位。我回去看那个，
I'm going to first show you how to use MCP Server because it allows your Claude desktop or any other MCP host to access hundreds of different tools and custom workflows that you can build inside of N8N. I think it's going to be super, super powerful. So from a blank workflow, let's add our first step. Since the MCP Server is something that our MCP host is going to consume, in N8N it's going to be a trigger. So let's search for MCP. And then we see the MCP server trigger in here. Let's click to add that to the canvas. It doesn't have any parameters right now. This is in beta. We're going to add some of the other things that MCP supports, but the N8N team wanted to get this out, get your feedback on this so we can iterate on it faster for you. So if you do have any feedback, make sure to go to community.n8n.io and drop a comment there. So we've added the MCP server. What we need to now do is give it some tools that then our host can access. For this first example, let's just add a really basic one and add the calculator tool because LLMs are not that good at doing math, so we'd rather have them use a tool for that. So let's do that. And let's save this. Now, you're going to want to make sure that your workflow is activated, so activate that. Next, we need to go over to Claude or whatever your MCP host is. Again, I'm going to use the Claude desktop app here. If you don't have the Claude desktop app, the dependencies you're going to need to run what we're doing here today is to download the Claude desktop app, have an Anthropic account. You're also going to have Node installed because Claude desktop today doesn't support communicating with MCP clients through SSE, which is what the N8N team supports in the MCP trigger. There's a lot of technical reasons why the N8N N8N team chose that, but you are going to have to use a gateway meanwhile that's going to basically do that SSE part and make sure that Claude can communicate with your MCP trigger. Once you open up Claude Desktop, make sure that you're in developer mode. To do that, in the top menu, there's going to be a help section, and it's going to say enable developer mode. I already did that.
看一下 Cloud Help Enable， 就这么简单吗？OK，
And I can't find a way to undo that, but make sure that you're in Claude developer mode and ask your favorite LLM if you don't know how to do that. Alright, so from Claude, open the settings, and then here we're going to go down to the developer section, and we want to click this edit config button. That's going to open up a folder, and in here we see this JSON file, so you're going to want to open that with your favorite text editor. In this case, I'm using Sublime. Unless you've been tinkering with MCP before, this page is going to be blank, and you're going to want to paste in this. A few things to call out. I am using Super Gateway here. This is going to allow Claude to communicate with our MCP trigger over SSE protocol, because Claude doesn't natively support that right now. So that is a dependency. And one pro tip here, if this is failing, if you're getting errors when you're trying this, try to run this command manually in your terminal. So npx, and then pass this arguments. Try to run this command.
应该是可以吧，没看到什么报错，看起来应该还行哦。
And manually in your terminal, so npx, and then pass this arguments, super gateway, SSE, and then swap in your webhook URL. Because I was having some errors around this, it was failing in terminal, and I actually had some permission errors around Node itself. I fixed that, and then it was working. So if you're getting some errors around that, first try to run this command manually in your terminal. Okay, the structure here is we've got MCP servers. We can have many of these MCP servers, right? And in this case, we need to now paste in that webhook URL. Let's go back to my workflow. Let's open that up. Let's get the webhook URL, copy that production URL, copy that, and let's paste that in here. So this is all good here. We're going to save this. Now we do need to restart Claude, so I'm hitting Command Q to close it. We're going to open it back up. It's loaded, and we see now we've got one MCP tool available here, and we see that we've got the calculator tool, and it's from the N8N server. Now we could have called the server calculator as well, but let's assume you have like your N8N instance, and you're going to want to have a few tools that you give Claude access to, so this could be a good way to go do that. Tool is called calculator. Let's see if we can run it. Let's see. Okay, so we get a permission check in here. This is interesting. Nice, it's even showing what arguments it would use. Okay, let's allow for this chat. Well, this is really cool how it's kind of the UX of how it's showing you how to interact with that. Okay, so this is what it responded with. It's 500. Let's go double check that. So in my workflow, I can go to the execute.
赞哦，赞哦，赞哦。
Nice, it's even showing what arguments it would use. Okay, let's allow for this chat. Well, this is really cool how it's kind of the UX of how it's showing you how it's interacting with that. Okay, so this is what it responded with. It's 500. Let's go double check that. So in my workflow, I can go over to the executions. Great, this one just ran. Just open up the calculator and see. Yep, that's the 500 response. Query 50 times 10. Perfect. And so this is just the calculator tool, right? I'm sure Claude even has its own calculator, so maybe that's not as interesting. But what I'm trying to show you here is how to get unblocked on setting this up, because actually creating this thing here took me a bit of effort. There was a few headbanging moments, so hopefully you avoid that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna have this in the description. If you're watching this somewhere else, get to the YouTube video, I will have this snippet here for you. And just to call out again, we can add many different tools here. There's all various vector stores you could use, so your Claude desktop or whatever host you're using can be a knowledge RAG assistant already, connecting with lots of different apps and services. But some of the really cool ones to call out, I think, where N8N is going to be really interesting is again the call N8N workflow tool, which is going to allow your MCP host to interact with any arbitrary N8N workflow. That itself could be an AI agent. It could be some air-gapped, self-hosted enterprise information that's really, really sensitive for you. So that's how you set up the MCP server trigger in N8N. If I click the tool here from my AI agent, let's add that to the canvas. Canvas MCP, and we'll see the MCP client tool. So let's click to add that. Now we'll set it up in a second, but just to contextualize this, the AI agent in this case is a host, right? As the host, it's going to interact with the client. In the client, we're going to configure the connection basically to the MCP server. So then the AI agent's our host, it's using the client to interact with our MCP server. Now, since we just built an MCP server through this MCP trigger in another workflow, let's have our AI agent here interact with that calculator tool. I'll double click on it and we're going to add a credential to connect with. We'll create a new one. And inside the credential, the SSE endpoint, that's what we need to actually get from our MCP trigger here. So I'll go in here and grab that production URL, paste in our SSE endpoint, and let's save this. And okay, great, we've got a connection test. Now that this is set up, let's close the credential. Since
what? Someday someone would probably use this to drive a car through LLM. I believe Tesla will make it soon possible before we can build it with our large language model. Yeah, let's take not a 15 minutes break. Let's take a 5 minutes break. Shall we? Shall we?我不要 long break。好吧，那我们就继续走吧。
Since an MCP server can offer multiple tools, we could choose to get all of the tools that that server has available, or we could just select those. So in this case, we can see we've established a connection with the system because it's shown us. This calculator here. Perfect. So now let's go back to the workflow canvas and let's give this a quick test by opening this. We can see all of the tools since an MCP. Okay, great. We've got a connection test. Now that this is we could choose, let's close the credential. Since an MCP server can offer multiple tools from PC client,
server for. And even if you're a beginner and you want to use this for some other type of MCP server or some other kind of agent, this is going to help you understand the fundamental things that you're going to need to do with every tool or every MCP server that you create. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand everything that you need to know to master MCP servers inside of N8N. So there's two sides to this MCP server thing, and I'm going to show you how you can create both of them in today's video, but I thought it would be easier if we started by illustrating this visually in this diagram here. So the first thing that you're going to have to understand when you're working with MCP servers is that there's a client side and a server side. Now, this might look a little bit confusing. This was confusing for me when I got started too, but I'm going to really break it down and simplify it for you. I'm going to show you all the steps to build this stuff, so don't be too concerned about that. Now, what happens when your AI agent needs to access a tool? Typically, you'd have to define a bunch of tools right under that agent, and it's just messy and inefficient. So what you can do instead is you can bundle those tools in tool for information. Think of we're going. You're going to log, and then once you're on the admin panel, you're going to see this little set. So we're going to click on this drop down to a version that's on the admin panel. Interact with that server. What we need to do first is we need to make sure we're on the right version of N8N. So in order to find that, you're going to log into your N8N account, and then from there you can go to the admin panel. And then once you're on the admin panel, you're going to see this little settings gear right here. And this is what you're going to want to click on. for me, but it will say updating in progress, actually up. But don't worry, it's back to the dash. We're going to hit, I'm going to do here to the name, and you can actually name it exactly what it is. So I'm just going to say MCP server. And in this case, I'm going to be building a server that can scrape websites for me. So I can talk with my AI agent, and then the AI agent is going to have access to this scraping capability. So it's going to be able to get real-time information from the internet and then come back to me with those results. So I'm going to call this MCP server Firecrawl, because Firecrawl is the tool that I'm going to be using for this guide. So now, as you can see, I've renamed this project right here. And what you can also do if you really want to get organized with this is you can hit add tag. And if I hit add tag, I can name this MCP server and then hit create tag. Now, I would recommend adding this MCP server tag to any of the MCP servers that you create. So once you get a nice, a solid base of MCP servers, you're going to have a bunch that you can pick from inside of N8N. And you can really just custom develop these and work on them one by one, as opposed to having to go into all of your agents and make changes as these tools change and as they update and as you want to add features and this and that. So I have that little MCP server tag. And now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click this plus button right here. And once you click that, you can type in MCP in the search bar, and you're going to see the MCP server trigger. This is the one that you're going to want to click on right here. It exposes N8N tools as an MCP server endpoint. So I'll click on that. And you're going to notice this is very basic. This is a typical webhook that we're used to if you've worked with webhooks inside of N8N, and it really makes it simple. You can also add authentication if you want to make sure this doesn't get called by just anyone. And basically, if this URL gets leaked or something like that, and people get access to it, they're going to be able to call your MCP server. So if you want to save on your executions, you don't want people querying your MCP server, then you can add authentication here if you want to. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to be leaving it wide open, and I'm just going to be using this URL directly. Now, once you have this set up, you're just going to go back to Canvas, and then we're simply going to add some tools to this MCP server. So where this gets really powerful is when you can actually use HTTP requests. And an HTTP request is just going to allow you to connect to different tools on the internet. Now, as I said, today I'm going to be using the Firecrawl tool, so I want to go find the documentation for how we contact this tool, and then I can create my own custom tools right underneath this MCP server. So if you head over to firecrawl.dev, this is the website that I'm going to be using. This is the tool that I'm going to be using for today's example. And now here's why I like Firecrawl for scraping. You can use other tools, or you could use an Apify actor or just an HTTP request, like a GET request. But the nice thing about Firecrawl is they're actually going to format all of that data for you however you want to receive it. So if you want the raw HTML, like the code structure that makes up the page, or if you just want it to be in clean formatted markdown, you can have it do that for you. And the really nice thing about Firecrawl is they're going to give you 500 free credits to begin with. You're not even going to need to pay for this tool until you're taking it to its absolute maximum potential. So that means you guys can just follow along with me here. Now, every website is a little bit different. Some allow scraping, some are not so friendly towards it. You're just going to have to read the terms on that website. And if I'm honest, a lot of times people kind of go against these rules, and Firecrawl does kind of add a barrier between you and whatever website you're scraping, so you don't have to worry about getting your personal IP banned. But regardless, from an ethical point of view, you're going to want to make sure that it's okay to scrape whatever you're scraping if this is what you want to use MCP servers for. So what I'm going to be doing is using a site that allows scraping right out of the box, and that is toscrape.com. Specifically books.toscrape.com. And this is just a database of books that I can use to test out my different scraping tools, and I can really just get a good idea of how they're working, right? So this provides fictional books and different ratings and titles and prices for those books. And it even gives categories so that we can really practice our scraping and we can get this down and kind of figure out how our tool works, right? So this is the website I'm going to be using. Now, what we can do to test out Firecrawl is I can use this website right here. So if I wanted to scrape this website, I would just type in books.toscrape.com, and then I can just hit start for free, 500 credits. And what it's going to do, guys, is it's actually going to go find that URL. It's going to scrape through that, and it's going to give me the results from that homepage. So if I scroll through here, you'll see that it's given me it in nice, clean markdown format. And it's showing me those books, their prices, and basically just giving me all of the content on that website. Now, scraping can be useful for keeping up on competitor pricing. It can be useful for lead generation. It can be useful for all sorts of different things. So this is just an example of how Firecrawl works. Now let's connect this to N8N and connect this to our MCP server so that we can use this tool wherever we are on the internet. Now, the other neat thing about Firecrawl that I haven't quite touched on yet is that you can scrape individual pages using Scrape. You can use their crawl tool to crawl the URL and access subpages underneath that URL. So this is going to give you a more robust idea of like everything that is under that URL. And it's going to give you everything, right? It's going to give you all of the different content from all of those pages. So this is a pretty hefty task. And I recommend when you're testing this out, you just do scrapes because crawl can really cost you quite a bit of credits. And then map here, this is going to give you a sitemap of the URLs. And it's really just going to give you context of what the entire website contains. Now, there is this neat feature from Firecrawl, and what this does is it uses an LLM, a large language model. It uses AI to get just the right information from the website that you're passing over. So if you're doing some kind of coding or something and you need the LLM to understand specific up-to-date documentation on a specific feature, then you could use this extract feature and it's going to go ahead and find exactly what you need from that website. Now, it's accepting like basically just a written response, so I can tell it what exactly I'm looking for when I want to use the extract feature. So what we're going to do is we're going to set all of these different features that Firecrawl offers as tools. Then our MCP server can kind of decide what it needs to fill out for these different tools, and it'll get to pick which one we use. So let's head over to the Firecrawl docs next to see exactly how we can set up these tools. So if I go to docs, what you're going to notice is they have their features down here. So we have the scrape, crawl, map, and extract. So if I wanted to make each of these tools over in N8N, I'm going to need to read through the different specifications that we need to set up for this. But it's pretty simple. I'm going to walk you through it. Again, like I'm not really a developer or a programmer. I just got into this like a year or two ago, and I've just come leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else because I've just spent a little bit of extra time steeping myself in it, really getting to understand it. And I think that you will be able to do that as well if you follow along here. Now, if you are serious about following along, I recommend joining AI Foundation. AI Enthusiasts together is under class Q&A, general employment to deal. If you're seriously going to be a pro, so a lot. I'm going to get back into the guide, but I just wanted to share that with you because I think I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you how I learned this stuff. And that's by just interacting with the right people, connecting with the right information, and really proximity to the luck that I need places. If you're learning APIs, if you're like stressed out about, I'm just going to copy this description used to scrape a URL and get its contents. And we're going to use this as the description for our tool. So I'll go ahead and copy this, and then I'll head back over to N8N where we have our MCP server trigger. And I'm going to click on the tools right here. And now the tool that we want to use to connect to Firecrawl is HTTP. So if I type in HTTP here, and then I click on HTTP request tool, it's going to open this up, and I'm going to paste into the description what Scrape had to say for itself, right? So use to scrape a URL and get its contents. This description is super important when you're setting up your tools, when you're setting up your MCP server, because it's going to tell your agent how to actually use this tool and what it's for. So I'm also going to rename this HTTP request to Scrape so that it knows what that tool does. And now I'm going to head back to Firecrawl to figure out how to configure the rest of this. And now if I go down to the usage here, I can click on CURL, and typically you can copy this, but unfortunately N8N doesn't allow a way to import this if you're using an HTTP request as a tool.
Okay, what do we have here? 我没想到竟然聊天室讲英文的比中文的还多啊。Which one was easier to set up N8N with models running in Ollama or Docker? I didn't experience N8N setup with Ollama. I only tried earlier with Docker, which was pretty easy. I'm not sure could it be more easier than Docker, but yeah. We're gonna move into a 5 minutes break, and later on in the next section I think we can go through some interesting stuff. Right, so learning how to redocument, learn how to add any tool you like with N8N MCP. Alright, let's take a small break. 休息一下，如果有人讲中文，拜托请讲点中文好吗？躺一下。 来了，来了，来了，完了，困了。
If you're just using it as a normal node, they do allow curl imports, and you can just literally copy this, paste it in, it generates it for you. But in this case, I'm going to have to copy a few things out of here. But it's pretty simple, right? So we have post, it says right here, and that's the type of HTTP request that we want to do. And then it also gives us this URL endpoint here. So I'm going to copy this endpoint, this v1 scrape. I'm going to head back to N8N, keeping in mind that this was a post method, and I'm going to change the method here to post just like it said, and I'm going to paste in that URL, and then we're just going to jog back over to the Firecrawl docs, and I'm going to see what else they want. So this -h here stands for header. So there's two header parameters that we need to add. We need to add the content type, application JSON. We need to add the authorization bearer your API key. So this is like how we can set this up to access our account basically with Firecrawl. So the first one is content type. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to remember that it's application/JSON. I'll head back over to the MCP server here, and we're just going to hit send headers. And then here for the name, I'm just going to paste in content-type. And then for the value provided, we'll do using field below. And I'm just going to enter what it said. So application/JSON. Make sure you type that out exactly how it wants it. So now that we have that first header parameter set, I'm going to go back and I'm going to see what the other one wanted. So I think it was authorization, and that would make sense. So I'll go back to Firecrawl here. And yes, it's authorization bearer your API key. So this is where you're going to put in your API key. And this is just a general practice that you're going to want to follow when you're using your API keys. This is like your password. Like, you don't want this just leaking anywhere. Otherwise, people are going to be able to use up your credits on Firecrawl or whatever application you're using. But when you're authorizing and you're putting a header in, you could just use that header that N8N provides, but that's not what I would recommend. It's less secure, and it's not going to be as easy to reuse that credential in the future. So I'm going to show you how to put your header authorization in the right place inside of N8N. So if I copy this authorization here, and then I'm going to remember that it's bearer space your API key, and I'm going to go back to N8N. And then what you're going to do is they've actually added this authentication tab here. So I can just click, and then I can click on generic credential type. And then if I click on this new dropdown that appeared, I can simply click header auth. So this is a header authorization. This is perfect for what we need. I'll click header auth. And then next, I'm just going to click this dropdown that just appeared. And we're going to create a new credential, because now you can see all perfect for I can credential type. And then if I click on this new dropdown that appeared, I can simply click header auth. So this is a header. What you're going to do is they've added API key, and I'm going to go back to N8N. And then what you're going to do is they've actually added this authentication tab here. So I can just click, and then I can click on generic credential type. And then if I click on this new dropdown that appeared, I can simply click header auth. So this is a header authorization. This is perfect for what we need. I'll click header auth. And then next, I'm just going to click this drop down that just appeared, and we're going to create a new credential, because now you can see all of my credentials are here, and I'm just going to hit create new credential because now we're actually accessing Firecrawl. So I'll go ahead and rename this so that I know what this is for. I'll just say this is the Firecrawl MCP server, and you can really name it whatever, just something that you'll remember there. And then for the name, we're going to paste in that authorization, or you can type it out. And then for the value, we're going to type in bearer, and then I'm going to put a space. I'm going to hit the space bar after I type bearer, all caps. And then we can go and get our API key from Firecrawl. Now, in order to access this, you're just going to go back over to Firecrawl. I can just boom back over. So paste and then save. Close this. Now I can just, no, I don't want to save it. Now I can just select the header auth Firecrawl MCP server here. And anytime I want to authorize for that, it's going to be in my credentials. It's going to be nice and secure and safe in there. So that's just a good practice for adding header auth. You could add it as a header parameter like I did here, where you just type authorization and then you put in the value of bearer space API key. But in this case, we just want to use this header auth method. Now let's head back over to the Firecrawl docs and see what else we need to add to this HTTP request. And you're going to get fast at this. So if you feel like this is a lot right now, this is just a skill that you're going to get and you're going to acquire to be able to build different automations and different MCP servers in the future. And it's going to be super powerful for you. So I encourage you to stick around, and I'm proud of you for making it this far in the video. So what I want you guys to do right now is, if you're still watching, just head down to the comment section and leave a comment. I'm excited about you. Back over to the Firecrawl docs after you've left your comment, and just scroll down a bit here, and we're going to see this next section here with URL and formats. Now, this is what we're going to want to put in our body after this D tag here, or after this D flag. So we're going to need a URL and we're going to need formats. And the beauty of this is I can just copy this JSON right here. That's what this is right here. This sort of like structure. It's basically a way for the code to understand what we're trying to pass. So we're trying to give it a URL so that it knows what URL we're going to scrape. And then we're giving it the formats that we want to receive that in. We want to receive it in Markdown, which is just really simple, almost plain text that's really easy to understand and read for human and large language model. And then we're also asking for HTML. So if we're asking for both, it's going to send both to us. So this is kind of nice. We can decide which formats we want, but for now, I'm just going to copy this template right here. And we're going to head back over to N8N. And I'm going to click on send body. And then down here, I can just click on this specify body, and I can click using JSON below. Now you can use fields if you want. I could just type this out manually. I could say URL, and then I could put in the URL that I want using the field below. Or actually in this case, we could use the by model, and this would force the model to fill out the URL. But in this case, I'm just going to use JSON just to show you how that works, because honestly, this is the more complicated way to do it, but you're going to understand it better. And overall, I think it's a better skill to acquire if you know how to use JSON. You can go and copy these workflows. You can use templates all you want, but if you don't understand how this stuff works, it's not going to be a fun time using N8N. So just click using JSON below and follow along here. Now you're going to notice it gives me this note, use a placeholder for any data to be filled in by the model. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So if I paste in this JSON here, I'm going to have a URL and I'm going to have formats. So I'm just going to actually backspace this curly bracket so that it's lined up like so. And if I zoom in just a bit here so that we can really see this, you're going to notice that we have the URL. And this is where you're going to put that placeholder for the URL. And the format, we could make that a placeholder as well. But let's say I just want it to give me Markdown, right? So I could just delete that HTML and the comma that was along with it. So I just want Markdown. And the reason being is I don't want to overwhelm the LLM that I'm sending this to. I just want it to get the plain text of that URL. Markdown is a good practice if you're trying to get context for your agent. So we're going to leave it on Markdown, and here for the URL, we're going to use a placeholder. Now, the neat thing about this tool is we're getting to the bottom of this HTTP request here, and this is the last thing you really need to do is you need to define what your placeholders are. So these are the things that the model is actually going to fill out.
好，各位，我要去丢个垃圾，所以我不确定今天有没有垃圾车，但我要下去看一下。Haven't tried Docker, but personally experienced that it's a bit hard to make a llama recognize model path. I haven't tried a llama, but I tried Docker. But I'm not sure about Docker, the relationship between Docker and a llama. But anyway, 我要去丢个垃圾 and I will see you later. Let's go. 如果今天没有垃圾车，就这样吧。 没有垃圾车。没事，继续，我们继续。
Out to customize your tool request. So if I hit add definition here, I can put in a placeholder name of URL, and then I can give it a description. So I can say, this is where you enter the URL for the page that you want to scrape. Perfect. That's all you really need to do. And then for the type, we can just make it a string, and a string is just a line of text. So it'll know that it needs to pass a string. If you select number, it'll expect to pass a number. Boolean will expect a 1 or a 0 or a true or a false. And JSON, you can do that as well if you want to pass actual JSON in your message. Now, I'm just going to go with string, and this is pretty much ready to go. Now, all I need to do, since this URL is the name here, is I need to, where the URL is, delete that. And then I just need to put some curly brackets and type in URL right here in the JSON. So now it'll know that it needs to fill that out because we have a placeholder definition set. Okay, perfect. Now our HTTP request for the scrape is pretty much ready to go. So if I go back to Canvas here, you're going to notice that now I have this single scrape tool here. It's defined, it has a name, everything is good to go. Now, one thing that you're going to want to do when you're working inside of N8N is you're going to want to save frequently. In fact, I've broken my #1 rule of saving after every change, but what you can do is you can just click this orange save button up here and you can manually save this because it's not going to automatically save for you. So just make sure you're saving frequently as you go throughout this process. And now personally, I want to make sure this works. I don't want to go and build out this entire MCP server with all of the different tools coming off of it and then just come to find out that it didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly test this out. And in order to test this, we're going to make this workflow active. And then I'm going to hit got it. And I'm going to click into my MCP server trigger. I'm going to switch to production URL. And I'm just going to click on this MCP URL. And this is going to copy the production URL. This is what we're going to use to call this MCP server. So once I've copied that, I can go back to Canvas. And you're not going to want to click back in because if you do, it flips it to test URL. So once you switch to production, go back to Canvas, and then now we're in production. So what we can do next is we can work on the client side. And this is just for testing purposes right now. This tool isn't fully fleshed out, but I want to make sure my agent can talk to this one tool that we already have for this MCP server. So I'll go back to my overview here, and I want to create a new workflow. And I'm going to name this workflow here Scraping Agent. And now there's all different types of ways that you can talk with your agent inside of N8N. You can use Telegram, you can use Slack, Microsoft Teams, you can use WhatsApp. There's all kinds of different methods. You can even build your own custom tool to talk to this with. And you can use something like Lovable or Cursor to vibe code that out. But for the sake of simplicity and for testing purposes, what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to hit this add first step, and we're going to type in chat. And I'm going to use the N8N chat trigger. Now, what this does is it allows us to just chat right here in N8N and practice on this. And if you wanted to, you could even stick with this later down the line. You can type in AI8N sort of this. You're going to notice that there are a few see here reports. You're going to billing probably your payment you select. It's just a way to so all result nation both horror stories with people using that model or and acts like it's correct, but really it's giving you like some garbage information or something that's incorrect. O3 Mini is really good at avoiding this. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a lot better than something like 4.0 Mini, which I've seen just some horror stories with people using that model. So I recommend going with O3 Mini. It's pretty reasonable in terms of pricing, and the quality is just amazing. So once you've selected that, you can go back to Canvas, and now we have our OpenAI chat model here. The next step in creating a case, and the session ID is really just a way to track that conversation. So it's a unique number letter combo that's going to rep Telegram or Slack. You're going to actually give it a defined session ID that represents the chat that you're in Slack or in Telegram or WhatsApp. But in this case, since we're just using the chat trigger node, we can automatically pull it from our chat trigger. So if you just select this option here, connected chat trigger node, it will automatically keep a memory of whatever you're typing into that chat. Again, if you're struggling with this concept of connecting to different chat tools, then I recommend joining our community, because we actually have you can go to the N8N connect to, and then we also local crowd community by using that trigger node for this interactions. And then I wanted to return with for window model. And next, this is where the fun part comes in. We're going to add in our MCP server. We're going to add our tool. So if I click the plus button here and I type in MCP, you're going to see the MCP client tool. I'm going to click on that. And this is referring to the MCP server that we created. So before I copied that webhook and I ended up, not saving that webhook. But the nice thing is we can always go back and grab that. We can also hook up our authentication for that if we did set up authentication over there. And we can decide which tools we want it to use. So we already have one tool. We have the scrape tool. And all I'm going to need to do is go grab my URL that I have in my other workflow. Keep our progress. Then I'll go to my overview and I'll click into my MCP server for Firecrawl. Then I'm going to click back into the MCP server trigger, Canvas, agent, and I'll click into this MCP client tool and I'm going to paste this right here. And now this will be able to access that tool. So if I wanted to, I could just go in and I could do selected tools and I could choose that I just want to include this scrape tool, for instance, or I could do all except, and I could choose which ones I don't want to include. Now, if I see the magic happen and we can see if our MCP server is able to be contacted. So I'm just going to click on save first, and then we're going to go ahead and open the chat. And I'm just going to say scrape the website books.toscrape.com and let me know what the top rated books are on that website. Now this is just a test again, and I'm using this test website where I know we can ethically scrape it. And I'll even put in the https:// just so it knows to use that full URL there. And then I'm just going to send this off. And the AI agent is going to go to work here, accessed our chat model, checked the memory. Now it's trying to use that MCP server tool. All right, perfect. We got a green check mark. That's a good sign. And we'll see what it responds with here. It should come back with some context from our MCP client. Okay, perfect. So it did come through. The Books to Scrape website is a demo site meant for practicing web scraping. Although it lists many books, it doesn't have a dedicated top-rated category. It's okay. And I'll go back to my overview now. And to check what this MCP server received and what it did with that information, we can go into the MCP server. We can click on executions. And here I can see the successful executions that it had. So right here, this first one is going to be the most recent. And if I wanted to see the information that it passed, I can just click into this scrape. And yes, I can see that we had a successful return, and then it gave me the markdown here. So it gave me the menu structure, and it came back with some information about this particular website. So now let's go back to the scraping agent and let's ask it a different question. All right, so now I'm just going to hit open chat, and I'm just going to say, name a book that you find on books.toscrape.com. Let's see this time if it can come back with some specific information, because I was asking it about top rated books, but in this case, I just want to make sure that the agent is actually getting the right information. So it is using that tool here. Go Going back to the model now that it received that. And it says one of the books you can see on bookstoscrape.com is A Light in the Attic. So let's go back to that website and make sure that is indeed available. All right, and now I'm here on Books to Scrape, and as you can see, it did find the first book and it returned it for me. So that's perfect. Now, since we know that this one tool is working for scraping, we can go back and we can add in those other tools for the MCP server. So if I go back to my overview, and then I click into the MCP server Firecrawl, I can then go and add in some new tools. So we have Scrape, but now let's add the other tools that Firecrawl allows us to use. So to simplify this process, I'm just going to duplicate this one that already exists, and we'll just edit it a bit. So we'll drag tool to connect that, and now it's connected, and I'll click into it. And here we're just going to change the description, the name, the URL, and potentially this JSON here. So let's go back to Firecrawl. And let's switch to the crawl. Now here, I'm just going to grab this description for the endpoint. We'll go back into N8N and we'll paste the description here. And I'll also rename this to crawl. And then I'll hit rename. Now over here in the docs, if I scroll down to the usage, I can see that we have a different URL endpoint. So I'll copy that and we'll replace this URL right here. And the authentication should stay the same. So that's the beauty of being able to just copy this. We already have that ready. And we're sending the header of application/JSON. And then down here, we're just going to need to change out the body a bit. And we might need to alter some of our placeholder definitions as well. So here under this D flag, we are going to see that there are some different things that we can add. So we can add scrape options for when it scrapes. We can add a limit for how many pages it's going to scrape, and we can also add in a URL. So I'm just going to copy all of this information here, and we're going to go back in here to the JSON, and I'm just going to paste that in. And now I'll just backspace this just to get it to the end. And for our URL, we already have that. So I can just put in our placeholder for it, since that URL placeholder already exists right here. And it tells it this is where you enter the URL for the page you want to scrape. In this case, I'm just going to say this is the place where you enter the URL for the base page that you want to crawl for this website. And for this example, I'm just going to make the limit 5 just so that it doesn't overwhelm the system and scrape too many things, but you can play around with that limit if you want. I recommend starting a bit lower. And for the formats, we can go with Markdown or HTML. I'll go with HTML for this one just to test it out and show you guys how that kind of works. And now this is good to go. If we wanted to add some different placeholders, we could just hit add definition and then we could put our placeholders in. But I think this looks pretty good. So now we'll go back to Canvas and we're just going to repeat this process for the other tools that Firecrawl allows for. Now I built out the extract and
好吧，休息一下。 好了，我来看一下。不想整理，不确定不整理行不行。但我觉得我这两个可以先不用了，先这样吧。
And or so now then that the pages are you can send.
我想就这么做啊，也挺好的了。那我这边可能会想要看一下，我好像看到一个 Airbnb 的之前这个 Airbnb agent。
What's up, guys? Alex here. Welcome back. Today I'm gonna show you how I built this MCP Airbnb AI agent. So this right here is the AI agent. Let's go ahead and test it out. Look for to our list it on it. I'm going to you can to download it, you're going to click on pool. Once you've done great, so once you create new credit, and if you also so put and we are using if you click on AI, so we've already set up the next thing you're going to do is you're going to click on this, so under the memory you're going to use the simple memory, and search for MCP. And if you also if you workflow didn't bring up errors initially, and you search for MCP and it doesn't show up in the list, you also need to reload your N8N. So once you do so, it's going to be in this list. So you click on MCP client, and so we need to set up credentials. We want to set up an Airbnb MCP, so we're going to go to this GitHub. So it's this GitHub. Yeah, so this one right here, so the MCP server Airbnb GitHub, and if we scroll down, it's got access to these tools, so it can do an Airbnb search, and it can also
怎么流程预想的？你说今天的吗？没有，就是一个随心所欲。我以为没有啦，我本来就有一些想做的了，然后对啊，但大部分的影片就是因为其实就蛮容易看到在首页在推一些影片的，我可能就会稍微放在心里，然后想着跟大家一起看，大概是这样。
also get Airbnb listing details, and so here how to set it. We are going to call this MCP server does not require an API key, so let's go right here, create new credentials, and we are using the standard input output, the stdio, and under the command we are going to copy this npx, so it's npx, let's copy this, paste it here, and arguments. We're going to copy this. And then you're going to paste it here. Click on the space bar and then add this second argument. So this right here. It's and if we scroll, CP sub is this GitHub. So it's this GitHub. Yeah, so this one right here, the MCP server Airbnb GitHub, and if we scroll down, it's got access to these tools, so it can do an we are going to copy this. Let's go output the stdio, and under the command we are going to copy this npx. So it's npx. Let's go. Copy this, paste this right, and so we're going to for MCP, and then let's click on save. Let's rename. So once you've set it up, so the tool is let's click on list tools. So we'll rename this to MCP client list.
完了，各位。有，这些我有放在这里面，都有，我都有放，有的，哦哟，但他现在，完了。
We are going to next week.
0402，你才过个2周就变不一样了呀。这个 SSE 的 endpoint 不能改啊。还是它就统一改成这样子啊？看一下，如果是这样子的话，这样可不可以？这样就要走 HTTP？
agent to build that. Go ahead. Then you after make. So the one is the A encryption. From that.
完了，转不起来。我吃超饱的耶，别这样。我吃了好大一碗白饭，还吃了一盘鲑鱼。我看一下，那不然我们用 local 端的来看看。来用一个 local 的local 是从我的 Docker， 它正在跑是吧？正在跑是吧？那我就加一个。看起来不太妙。看起来乱七八糟的，先整理一下。这个是等一下要写的地方，这先放这儿。这里我应该可以找到 Airbnb 吧？哦，这里找不到，刚在这里找过了。然后在我的网页的地方，这里，
This is possibly the craziest video I have ever made. This workflow will blow your socks off. Things are about to get crazy, okay? So, obviously, everyone knows about the N8N MCP, but when did autonomous, and basically we're going to be swearing, but this is crazy, guys. N8, you can school and put something called Node T, NPX N8N, right? Okay, we're at the same point in time. If you've got in school, click on OK of this. This is what you need. Gmail. I'm using Gmail. I believe it's not even a tool, if I'm correct, but anyway. So we'll click here, right? Credentials to connect with. I'll just create a new credential so that you guys know how to do all of this. This OAuth redirect URL, I'm going to press copy right here, and I'm going to add that here, right? I believe we also have to put something here, so I'm just going to put local host like that, and then press create, right? I'll have deleted all of this by the time this video goes live, right? So client ID goes here, client secret goes here, and then sign in. Okay, this might not work because I haven't said that. So let's just run through this and see if it does work. Right? And we'll do email type text. We could do HTML, to be honest with you. If we cancel here, then we'll hop on over to Visual Studio Code. I love saying that word. Go to client, right? Servers, right? So just so you know, I have Fetch and Brave as remote, so the other side and reconnect here. This was working before. I promise you. One survey tasks because I think this is going to be absolutely fucking nuts with Boomerang tasks. I'm sorry to keep swearing. Our MCP and replace it with always allow. I don't know why they would. And now if I go on Roo again, then we should use this. I'm sorry. So we'll just go to Roo. I do need to open a folder for this, annoyingly, but that's fine. We'll just select this folder, whatever. So we'll just go to Roo here because I do want to do this with Boomerang tasks because I think this press done. This stream, I think it can. No. Okay, so yeah, I'm a complete idiot, guys. I stopped N8N, that's why it didn't load file in order to serve autonomous. Let's combine a few MCPs here. Let's just see. Try. Let me just steps. I want to do draft because I don't actually want to send any emails out, of course. Okay, so you find on MCP while the one have a P server. This that send all 2 minutes with this. Replace a million. Make sure all this at the same tool in. They have this thing is.
不确定这发生什么事，不过应该要可以的呀。这个应该可以的呀。看一下，为什么这个不行啊？连不到。 连不到。这个我也不知道发生什么事了呀，各位，不确定。就原本好像可以的呀。不过好吧，今天就先这样了。今天也学到很多东西了，也成功用 Cloud 还是什么的做出了一个计算机。可以。祝大家今晚都有个好梦。那我等下开个会，就准备去刷牙、洗脸、睡觉啦。祝明天课程一切顺利，祝大家今晚一觉好眠。明天晚上应该开不了直播，是的，拜拜拜拜。Where is 直播？